So give me a second. Turn this stuff around. Boom, there we go. Just getting the camera stand set up here, guys. There we go, that'll do the trick. Hopefully y'all got something nice out there, guys. Guys, apologies for this now. Excellent. Guys, I'm going to get started here now, so in a second. Who's out there in the audience? Billy, what's happening? Hazmat, what's going on? Good Czar. What's happening, everybody? Just a quick rundown, guys. We're going to start off just a little public fucking awareness raising event here today for the day that's in it. It is the first Saturday of May. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically it was known as Million Marijuana March initially, and then they rebranded it as the Global Marijuana March afterwards. So we're down here for that. It's the first Saturday of May, the 7th of May. We're down here. We got the Patients for Safe Access banner down here representing the patients, because, you know, what's that, bring the camera a bit closer to the sign, dude. Yeah, I suppose I could really, wouldn't I? Production crew outside. Go on, go for it. Nice one to Advanced Hearing. Advanced Hearing here getting some free advertising. We were going to actually go from up outside of the Peace Park, but there's people up there fucking campaigning for Palestine today. So we said we'd be nice and we let the Palestine guys have their corner. So yeah, we'll get started here anyway. Amateur mistake, brought no fucking water. Yep. John Finnan, you're a legend. Nice one. Great call there and bringing the camera closer. You can even get a little bit closer, but not too close, because I'm going to be on that fucking megaphone yoki there now in a second. So, Advanced Hearing, I hope you don't mind. Always hate getting these fucking things started. They're awkward. The man has no shortage of balls. Guys, nice one for being in the audience out there. Apologies there for the little delay getting started. Should have actually been live for 4:20, but fucking the battery's gone dead in my microphone yoke there. So I had to go get batteries. That's right, let's get cracking. I'm in the frame.
Sweet. Alright guys, my name is Martin Condon and I'm just down here today on the 7th of May. Might seem like an insignificant day to most people out there, but today is the first Saturday of May. And every year, for the last number of years, there's been a global day of action around the world. A day of action in support of change of policies around access to cannabis. I'm down here today representing a podcast that I host myself called Martin's World, and I'm also a director of the Patients for Safe Access. The Patients for Safe Access, we represent a number of patients from right across the island of Ireland who are struggling today because of the lack of access to cannabis as a medicine. Many of those patients are suffering in chronic pain and they rely on organised crime gangs to deliver their medicine. In this day and age, that's just not acceptable. There's a medical cannabis access program that was supposed to have gotten up and running about 3 or 4 years ago, but again, through the can kicking and the heel dragging of the government, people were left in agony. People were left, again, as I said, in the hands of the organised crime gangs to rely on them for the delivery of their medicine. Again, that is not acceptable. That is not acceptable when we see first-hand evidence that cannabis is a medicine and it's helping people. People like Alicia Maher, who's pictured here on this banner. Alicia Maher is a Cork lady, and she had to leave her home here in Cork, and she had to go to Alicante in Spain. She did this because in Alicante in Spain, they're afforded much more greater access to cannabis. It still exists in the grey area, but the access over there is much more effective than what it is there. Alicia can go down to a local cannabis dispensary, she can acquire cannabis, and that helps to treat her chronic pain. Chronic pain which was untreated in the past when she was here in Ireland, relying on the doctors who were providing her with opiates. They gave her opiates which drained the colour out of her life. They left these opiates, they left her couch-ridden, unable to get up and engage in everyday life activity. When Alicia was recommended that she try cannabis for the first time, she's not a regular cannabis user, and she was kind of taken back by it. A friend supplied her some cannabis vape cartridges, and the difference from trying it was day and night. The first time Alicia tried it, she can remember it was the first time she was laughing in quite a long time. So again, for the government not to be providing safe and effective access to patients like Alicia, for Alicia to be forced to leave her home in Cork to go to Alicante in Spain, that is just not acceptable. Alicia was doing her a master's law degree in the University of Limerick. Alicia had to leave her home. She had to stop her studies to go over there and put her life in hold. Alicia's been waiting over there now in limbo, waiting for the time in which she can return to Ireland and not be treated like a criminal for her use of cannabis as a medicine. Alicia is just one of many patients out there today suffering without access to cannabis as a medicine. I have here in my ear some cannabis which I got illegally. It's not that hard to get, that's the unfortunate thing. Patients can get access to cannabis, and when they get access to it and they find out that it works for them, the thing that they cannot get after that then is consistency in that access. The dealer that they might have got that cannabis off of, they might have different cannabis the following week, and that cannabis can actually exacerbate some people's conditions. I myself, I suffer with epilepsy. There's certain strains of cannabis, there's certain chemo profiles of cannabinoids, and certain combinations of terpenes which can actually trigger my seizures. Then there's other strains of cannabis which can very effectively mitigate my seizures as soon as I feel an aura coming on. If I consume the right variety of cannabis, I can stop a seizure dead in its tracks, and I've done this on several occasions in the past. But again, as I say, the one thing I cannot keep doing is have a consistent supply of medicine. As I said, the strains are very specific, the condition that you want to treat, and you need to be able to get a consistent supply of that. So, as I said, I have a little bit of cannabis here. I'm going to engage in an act of civil disobedience here. I'm going to spark this up. I'm going to break the law here. I'm going to medicate here illegally, as we have to. I'm not going to do it hidden away. We're forced to do because of these laws. I'm going to do it out here publicly, openly, in defiance of the laws, just to highlight how much patients are suffering because of this, okay? So if a cop wants to come over and intervene, you're more than welcome to come and take my medicine if you wish. So as I stand here and I self-medicate with some cannabis, I ask you, is cannabis prohibition worth it? Is the pain and suffering endured by these patients worth it? When we have teenagers out there getting access to cannabis and they're openly selling cannabis on the streets here in Cork and in your neighbourhoods, is that right? That's not right at all. If we were to have a prohibition around alcohol, would it be right if kids were selling alcohol to adults? That's the current situation here in Ireland. I've been in that situation myself when I went to get some cannabis as a grown man, and I was met by a 15-year-old. That didn't sit right with me. That was not right. And I just couldn't sit by and not do anything about that. And that's why I'm out here today, highlighting the problems created because of cannabis prohibition, suffering on patients, suffering on individuals, treated like criminals for something that again, who's getting hurt there right now, breaking that law right now? We spend hundreds of millions every year to try to prevent this. It's not effective. By keeping cannabis illegal, not only are we making it easier for kids to get access to it, but we're empowering organised crime gangs who then take advantage of those same kids. These kids are already vulnerable individuals in society. It's no secret that as you grow up, as you become a teenager, you do become experimental. You dabble, you try some maybe tobacco, you might try alcohol, you might try some cannabis. But the difference between tobacco and alcohol is if you go and try that, you're on a danger of being recruited into the selling of tobacco and alcohol. But if you dabble in some cannabis, you can be recruited into the selling of cannabis and even more worse drugs there as well. They want to talk about cannabis being a gateway drug. Well, in reality, the only thing that's a gateway is the prohibition of cannabis that puts cannabis side by side with other more dangerous drugs into the hands of our teenagers to then sell them in our communities. That's just outrageous. The Gardaí are ineffective at preventing the sale of cannabis and other drugs in our society. And all that we've done over the last 40, 50 years that we've had cannabis prohibition is create crime families like the Kinahans. We all know of the Kinahans. There was a $5 million fee recently put out on the heads of each of the members of the Kinahan family by the American government. That goes to tell you how much of a failure cannabis prohibition is. We've empowered gangs like this, gangs like that who go out and then recruit teenagers like Keane Mulready Woods. Because of drug prohibition, we had a teenager brutally murdered. His body was dismembered, found in different locations across Ireland. Is this right? Do we want to continue with policies that empower organised crime gangs like that, to go and exploit teenagers in our communities? Again, a prohibition that causes suffering to patients like Alicia, patients like myself, patients like Jen Devlin, Kenny Tynan, the list goes on, I can keep on naming them. Many patients who currently have access to cannabis in Ireland as a medicine are in fact children with severe epilepsy, and cannabis is keeping them alive. It's not only keeping them alive, it's giving them a higher quality of life than they ever had before. Kids who lost the ability to walk and talk, once they got access to cannabis as a medicine, they began to walk and talk again. We're seeing it all around the world where the laws have been changed when access to cannabis is afforded to patients through professional healthcare providers. patients' lives improve. Prohibition of cannabis has brought nothing but suffering to the lives of the many people out there. And again, I ask you, is it worth it? I'm here defying the law, openly breaking that law here today, self-medicating with cannabis as an epilepsy patient. So again, is it worth it?
Thanks very much.
Take a picture.
Of course, yeah. Got my banner from one.
I like what you're speaking.
Yeah, thanks, man. If you want to grab a banner or a flyer, a load of them down there as well.
I don't smoke, I get paranoid, but
Yeah, that's it. But you,
I wish I can smoke, man.
yeah, but I think people like yourself would benefit from a legal market, because I think a lot of what is there at the moment, it's very strong. And I think if you were to go in and like
Microdose or something.
something like that, you know the difference between having a Budweiser and a whiskey, something like that, you know, maybe even like a kind of a shandy where you mix in a little bit of
favorite joint I want one.
yeah, of course, yeah.
What third drink I wanted to have. One more.
Insurance safe and legal access to cannabis from therapeutic disease.
Nice, man.
Yeah, no problem at all. This is the podcast, Scott Martin's World.
You do that, yeah.
Yeah, it's on Facebook, Instagram. We're live on YouTube at the moment there now, and I kind of been campaigning for many years for this for the patients, and yeah. Well, thanks very much for coming by, and yeah, if you get those photos up online, tag me in them.
Yeah. Always,
What's your own name?
my name is Mladen.
Mladen.
I'm from Croatia.
Nice to meet you. I'm Martin, anyways, no name. Martin.
Martin.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Check on YouTube, yeah.
On YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of them.
Why are you advocating for cannabis?
Because when I was younger, I got criminalised, and it ruined my life at the time. It made life very difficult. Whereas cannabis, for me at the time, like it made you paranoid, but for me, it kind of calmed me down. It allowed me to be more me.
Yeah, you see what that's the people with Tourette's syndrome.
Yeah.
They smoke just a few puffs and like after 2 minutes they get kind of
Exactly. Yeah.
They don't do like this.
Yeah, for Parkinson's as well. That there's lots of conditions that it seems to be very helpful with. But it's unfortunate that those patients can't walk into a professional place and get access. And people like yourself, if some cannabis makes you paranoid, it'd be nice maybe to come in and try something a lot lighter that might be more relaxing for you.
I think actually it could help me a lot, you know.
Well, quite possibly, but when it's illegal, it's difficult. I will say that.
It's just my mind.
Yeah.
I also have this thing like PTSD. I always see negative like triggers and stuff.
Yeah.
So if I in my mind, if I kind of learn manage those, maybe when I smoke joints, you know, if I get stronger, maybe it won't be nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's about the level of the dose anyway, getting it right. But it's hard to do it legally. You don't know what you're getting. So,
But still won't kill you. It's nice.
No, definitely not. I better get back to this anyway. And thanks very much for stopping in and chatting. Like chatting with you. Alright guys, just having a chat there with somebody, and you probably might have caught some of that. Who's out there? Billy Bonds, John Figgin, yes Martin, love it. Amy Riley as well, I love it, sparking up now with you. Jesus Martin, that was good. Nice one, Hazmat. And as well, John Finnegan, excellent people interacting and getting advice from Martin. I love it. yeah, we were getting a lot of people stopping and chatting. There's a few bus stops here behind me as well. So there's nice bit of a crowd kind of around the place, you know. So I just swing it around there. Boom. But yeah, nice little crowd gathering. We'll get back to it.
again, just to remind people, guys, we're down here today. It's the Global Marijuana March. It's a global day of action for policy change around access to cannabis right across the world. I'm down here representing Cork City, putting Ireland on the map today for the Global Marijuana March. We're down here also representing patients for safe access, patients like Alicia Maher, a Cork woman dislocated from her country. She had to move over to Alicante in Spain to get access to cannabis, and that is ridiculous. Again, there's probably teenagers walking around here who could probably sell me some cannabis now. But for patients like Alicia, she can't go to her doctor and say, "Hi, son, yeah, see, there we go, your man's giving me taking on nice one, kid." But again, you know, all jokes aside, guys, the prohibition of cannabis, it's absolutely ridiculous. It causes more suffering than cannabis can ever do on its own. I'm here, I'm self-medicating, openly breaking the law around the prohibition of cannabis. And I'll continue to do so, like many other patients right across Ireland, until the government do the right thing and change the law around the access to cannabis and provide safe and effective access to patients and stop treating us like criminals.
You got ever up in Cork over us?
7
grams, I'll stop.
40.
Alright, Clacky.
Alright, kid. 40, come here. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's a fucking joke, man. Better not a bother, right?
Ah, man. Yeah, man. Fucking,
Yeah, I know a lot of people who'd say that for him, right? There's a lot of people believing that, but yeah. That lady picture now, Alicia, she's a Corker, but she had to move over to Alicante. No, that was Vera, that was Vera too. I mean, she was another woman who had to leave the country over the stupid prohibition.
how much time she gets?
No, but you know, she left for herself. Her problem started, she went into the hospital to get her tonsils removed. And then a few fucking complications, man. She ended up having to get like removed and everything because she got like MRSA. Like, a few just medical accidents happened, like, you know, the shamans and yeah, she was like in chronic pain, man. She's been bedridden over the tablets and shit that they had her on. And a friend said, "Come here, try some of this." Gave her a wee bit. And the night her pain fucking melted away. She said, like, you know, she was kind of laughing and living life again, like. And she was able to go back to college the whole lot, like, whereas on tablets, it's yeah, that's just your brain on drugs and they're frying the egg, like.
And then they fill the fucking and all this shit.
Yeah.
Fucking over the street, and then the withdrawals, and they're all trying to fucking heroin addicts.
I know, yeah.
And then where was fucking American God in Afghanistan, where they accept them up there.
Yeah, man.
What's happening in Cork, in Europe?
Yeah, it was a funny point telling me that the Aussies are getting more prevalent over here now as well, like, and you know the crack there, like, you know. Yeah. But it's mad though, but doctor would fucking have to hand you a prescription for these things, like, whereas like this, like a little bit of herb, like, you know, that does the... Yeah, that's what it's doing there, like, just kind of openly breaking the law, like. Yeah, not a bother, I spark back up there, so. Yeah, that's gelato inside there, anyway. And 53.5. Well, it shouldn't be like, do you know what I mean? It should be way less than that, like. Yeah. It shouldn't be more than the euro around there. It's cheap as chips, like, you know what I mean? Like when you think of it, right, you went to the shop and you buy a bottle. No, I can just campaign for it, but yeah, that's about it, but.
Have you Facebook page,
Martin's World. There we go, right? We're at that right now.
Maybe get back there, no Wi-Fi.
Yeah, not a bother, right? Yeah, not a bother. You might have seen some of the things there. There's planted plants across the city and stuff like that last year. Oh yeah, I know what you're on about, boy. Fucking shit. Yeah, Dank of England guy. Yeah, but what was his name, boy? Fuck, I can't think of his name now. Fuck. Yeah, I don't know what happened to him. I don't know the story. I was turning over the yeah. The brand is still going though. That's the only thing. But,
Fucking nice one chatting to you, boy. Enjoy the rest of your day, boy.
So again, just for people who might be walking by and you might know, we're standing around here with this and the banner and all of that. Today is the first Saturday of May, otherwise known as Global Marijuana March. It's a day of action around the world for policy change around access to cannabis, for the end of the prohibition of cannabis. The prohibition of cannabis has brought nothing but misery to our communities. It's only made cannabis more accessible to our kids and more dangerous to the consumers who consume it. So again, we're down here hopefully breaking the law, consuming some cannabis here. I'm an epilepsy patient myself, so I'm down here self-medicating. This is quite a stressful thing to have to do. The stress of campaigning, the stress of being criminalised for cannabis, that's caused me many seizures. I'm now self-medicating to keep myself nice and calm and relaxed here while I campaign for safer access to cannabis as a medicine. So I have a banner here, or a flyer, and if anybody wants to come by and take a flyer, you're more than welcome to, but there's some statistics here on this flyer. This flyer was put together by the Cannabis Activist Alliance. The Cannabis Activist Alliance is a group of activists right across Ireland campaigning for access to cannabis and for the ending of prohibition of cannabis. They've got down there the population of Colorado, which isn't much further off of the population of Ireland. The population of Colorado is 5.7 million people. Colorado in 2019, from the sale of cannabis, generated $1.7 billion. So not only did they generate $1.7 billion, but they created an environment where access to cannabis was made much more safer for the consumers. It was made much more difficult for kids to get access to cannabis, despite what prohibitionists might say about legalizing and ending cannabis prohibition. So adult cannabis consumers make up 26% of the population of Colorado. The tax revenue from that 2019 sale of cannabis was $302 million. That was $302 million that went into local hospitals, schools and roads. That's $302 million that did not go into the pockets of organised crime groups because of prohibition of cannabis. 41,000 people were employed in the state of Colorado in 2019 in the cannabis industry. 3,000 businesses were generated because of the legalizing of cannabis in Colorado. Again, Colorado is a population very similar to that of Ireland. So, are we needlessly handing over billions of euros to the organised crime groups of Ireland, to the crime group families like the Kinahans, the Hutches? These groups out there have made millions, if not billions of euros because of the prohibition of cannabis. If we were to end cannabis prohibition here in Ireland, not only would we make access to cannabis safer and more difficult for the younger population, we could generate thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions for our local economy. We could be putting that money into local services that again can help the vulnerable kids out there, kids who might be prone or are at risk of developing addiction because of their position in the community, the socio-economic environment within that community. Again, from the legalization of cannabis, we could generate enough money that we could put into these communities. We could provide access to services like boxing clubs, local martial arts clubs. I'm a bit biased in that one myself as I'm involved in that one. But again, these services, these divert young kids away from dabbling in drugs. From the prohibition of cannabis, we just make it easier for these kids to get into the hands of organised crime groups. We legalise it, not only will we make it more difficult for the organised crime groups to get access to our kids, we can also fund services that can protect these vulnerable kids in our communities. So again, Ireland's a population of 5 million people. Potential tax revenues here could be in the excess of billions. Instead of going into the local community, it's going into the organised crime groups' pockets. Again, they're exploiting our younger generations, and that's happening because not of cannabis, but because of the prohibition of cannabis. It's not worth it. I myself, as a younger person, I was criminalised because of my use of cannabis, and it served me no good. The criminalisation that I faced, it only ostracised me from my family. It made my connection with my family much more difficult because they viewed me as a criminal also, because of the guards calling to the doors. That makes life more difficult for a person who's already more vulnerable. If I was dabbling in drugs at that young age, surely I did not need punishment. Surely it was more guidance and help I would have needed. Instead, it was punishment. Instead, you're a criminal, you're a druggie, and that's the stigma you face. I, as a young person, I didn't realise it at the time, but my use of cannabis was a form of self-medication. I benefited greatly as a young person from my use of cannabis as it calmed me down. It allowed me to engage with my thoughts in a way in which I didn't engage with my thoughts in the past. It allowed me to make better, more rational decisions. Before I was using cannabis, I was a bit of a wild child and I was making maybe some decisions that weren't the greatest to be making. Again, consuming a bit of cannabis, chilled out with the lads after work, watching some movies, getting the munchies. What harm was I doing? In Ireland, it costs €80,000 on average a year to keep a prisoner in a prison. Operation Tara, which was launched last July, it involves 321 full-time Gardaí with an annual cost of in excess of €14 million. Their primary and sole purpose is to target drug dealers and drug users. That's €14 million which could be used in services to help vulnerable people. Instead, we're funding the authorities to go out there and terrorise these vulnerable people. Between 35 and 40% of drug arrests between 2002 and 2018 were for cannabis use for personal use. Again, it's an estimated that the cannabis industry in Ireland could be in excess of €5 billion if we were to legalise it, and that's based off of the 2019 seizure figures of €50 million, and that's using Paul O'Mahony's estimation of a 1% capture rate. Is it right that we're gifting a potential €5 billion industry to criminals at the same time as giving them easier access to our kids? I've 3 kids myself, and I do not want to see them grow up in a community where it's easier for the organised crime gangs to prey upon my kids. Tobacco and alcohol, they're not as for sale within the school. But again, I know many schools out there, secondary schools, where kids are selling cannabis to each other. They're selling cannabis edibles to each other. If you want to get alcohol, you probably go to your cousin who's 18 and you'd ask him to go to the off licence for you. I'd imagine that's a much safer situation if you wanted to get cannabis also. But currently, no, that's not the situation. Your kids are able to buy cannabis in their secondary schools because of cannabis prohibition. If we regulated cannabis, again, it'd be like alcohol. If they wanted to dabble with it at an underage, they would ask their cousin, who's probably an appropriate age, to go into the off licence and pick up some alcohol from them. Let's grab a flyer if you want.
Alright guys, shout out to everybody out there in the hot box, even though the hot box is not up, but what's happening? Alright Greenbeard, Chilbert, what's happening? Alright guys, just down here doing a little bit of awareness raising anyway, as you can see. Got it just over 30 minutes of civil disobedience going on. Global Marijuana March. You probably already caught that part. But nice one, guys, for everybody tuning in. What's that? Greenbeard says, I'm just doing the same here. Great weather for it. What's up, Greenbeard? What's happening, dude?
So as I finish off the act of civil disobedience down here, guys, on the Global Marijuana March, I just want to finish off by saying the prohibition of cannabis is an absolute failure and it's got to end. Got to also remind you guys that the Patients for Safe Access, we're going to be holding a conference above in Dublin on the 11th of June in the Sugarloaf Club, I think it's called. But that's on the 11th of June above in Dublin. There's tickets up on Eventbrite if you want to get tickets there for that. But again, the Patients for Safe Access is a group set up by patients for patients, campaigning for safe access to cannabis in Ireland. The current access to cannabis in Ireland is not effective. It's putting patients at risk. It's leaving patients in situations where they have to leave their home country, they have to go over to countries where access to cannabis is actually afforded to patients in a much more safer and effective way. So that's the 11th of June, Patients for Safe Access. They're going to be doing a conference above in Dublin. So if you want to learn more about the patients, we're going to have many patients speaking there on the day. We're going to have industry experts coming in speaking as well, cannabis growers and people who've been criminalised for the use of cannabis. We're also going to have politicians there as well on the day speaking. So that's the 11th of June above in Dublin in the Sugarloaf Club.
She's dead.
So guys, just to remind you, Global Marijuana March today is a global day of action, for a campaign for policy change around access to cannabis. I'm down here representing Martin's World and also Patients for Safe Access, a group set up by patients for patients for safe access to cannabis as a medicine in Ireland. Again, I've got some statistics here from the Cannabis Activist Alliance of Ireland. They're comparing the population of Colorado, where they legalised cannabis access back in 2019. The population of Colorado is 5.7 million. The population of Ireland is 5 million. In Colorado in 2019, from the sale of cannabis, they generated $1.7 billion. From that, $302 million went into the local economy, into things like the local hospitals, into schools, roads, and other things that benefited the community. The great thing there is $1.7 billion did not go into the pockets of organised crime groups because of the prohibition of cannabis. If Ireland was to legalise and end the prohibition of cannabis, not only would we make it safer for kids because they wouldn't be preyed upon by organised crime groups, and if the access to cannabis would be more difficult for them, we could potentially generate hundreds of millions for the local economy at the same time of creating thousands of jobs. In Colorado, they created 41,000 jobs in 2019 from the ending of cannabis prohibition. Colorado has a population very similar to that of Ireland. Again, are we potentially missing out on 40,000 jobs here because of the prohibition of cannabis? Are we potentially criminalising a large portion of our population in order to continue this failed prohibition of cannabis? A prohibition that it's only made our communities much more dangerous for the younger generation. They get preyed upon by the organised crime groups. The kids who go out and end up dealing the cannabis for these groups, they're much more likely to end up in situations where they end up like the young fella in Cork who recently got raided. €60,000 worth of cannabis paraded in the media as a success. The Gardaí seized it from a young teenager. He also seized €9,000 in cash from that teenager. That teenager now is left in a situation where he's liable to owe that organised crime gang thousands of euro. That crime group gang will not care the fact that the guards took that cannabis from him. That crime group are going to demand that they want that money. They're going to show up at that young fella's door. It's going to be another one of the young fellas out there whose mum is going to have to get a remortgage on the house or something to pay off the drug debt of the young fella. Because why? Not because the young fella was addicted to drugs, not because the use of his drugs created problems, no, because of the prohibition of drugs, which made the organised crime groups in a powerful position where they can prey upon these vulnerable individuals. Again, if you're an alcohol addict, if you're a person who's addicted to alcohol, the local off license is not going to give you a tab. They're not going to put you in a situation where you have to go and sell alcohol then to other addicts. No, that doesn't happen. Why? Because regulation works. Regulation makes our communities safer. It puts the drugs in a situation where it's much more difficult for kids to get access to them. Again, I know schools here within the local area where kids are openly selling cannabis to one another in the form of jellies and in the form of flowers too. These kids are not selling tobacco to each other in the school. They're not selling alcohol to each other in the school. Why is that? Because regulation of these substances work. I'm not saying that there's not kids out there using alcohol or tobacco, but when they do use alcohol or tobacco, it's a much more safer situation. They might ask their cousin to go into the shop, go into the off license and get them a couple of bottles. Is that not better than them going to the local drug dealer asking for cannabis and he'll give it to them and take into the thousands of euros, and then you're going to have a masked thug showing up at your front door demanding that you pay out thousands of euro before the drug debt created because of cannabis prohibition, not because of a cannabis addiction, not because of a drug abuse, simply because of a prohibition. Because again, I'll use the example of alcohol. The local off license will not recruit addicts to sell their substance. The substance is good enough, it'll do itself, the same as cannabis. If we put cannabis into the hands of a controlled, regulated environment, those cannabis retailers will not be recruiting your kids to sell cannabis in the schools. It'll make it much more difficult for their kids to get cannabis. And again, if they do get access to cannabis, it will make it much safer. The kids will know what they're consuming. Currently, kids are consuming cannabis and they don't even know if it's even cannabis. Synthetic cannabinoids are a real problem out there today because of cannabis prohibition. So again, the cotton mouth is kicking in, and I'm here for over an hour. We engaged in an act of civil disobedience. We broke the law here today. We campaigned for the change of our laws around access to cannabis. We want to make it safer for patients. We want to stop the discrimination of cannabis consumers. We are not criminals. We want to make our community safer for our kids. I have 3 kids myself, and I do not want them in a situation where an organised crime group can recruit them into the trade of dealing because of the prohibition of the drug. End cannabis prohibition, make our community safer, create jobs, low access and safe and regulated access and effective access to a medicine for all the patients who need it. I'm Martin Condon, guys. I'm here with Martin's World. I'm here with the Patients for Safe Access. We have a conference on the 11th of June. So check us out, find our website, and tickets are up there as well if you want to get a ticket.
So there we go, guys. I'm done and dusted. The fucking cotton mouth is serious. Let's flick the camera around. Hey. Oh, yes. But yes, there we go. Let's see who's out there. 18 of you out there, guys. Nice one for sticking by and watching. I got a little bit repetitive because there was just new people going by, and as I said, it's a public awareness campaign here today, you know, as part of the Global Marijuana March global campaign. So hopefully that was all good. Hopefully it wasn't fucking too loud over that megaphone and stuff. We got nice crowds kind of passing, getting lots of thumbs up and nods of approval there from people as they were going by as well. So guys, make sure you share the video as well. You know, it goes without saying, if I can get it shared across social media and stuff. I won't be home for a while, so I won't be able to share it on Facebook and things like that myself. So I trust the rest of you will be able to do all of that good stuff for me. Greenbeard, Amy Riley, guys, nice one for all of the comments. Nice one, guys. Greenbeard says, great speech, Martin. Fucking cottonmouth strikes again. Yeah, man, fucking amateur mistake, man. You think I know it better by now? I should come well prepared with the Ishka, but fucking I'd no batteries from a megaphone, so I left a bottle of water in my car down as I went to get batteries. So shit, man. Chilbert says, glad to hear you're on the mend. Yeah, guys. About that, I suppose. Yeah, fucking. I had a rough one there last week. For the people who are still there. After Saturday's protest in Phoenix Park, it just took a lot out of me, I'd imagine. And the next day, then on the Sunday, I had a load of seizures, and a status epilepticus, this is what it's known as. Just had a rolling fucking series of seizures happening. So I ended up in the hospital for a couple of days. But yeah, I fucking, to be honest, like I'm lucky to even be here. Like to be fair, like it was a scary one. Fucking kind of woke up in a situation where I didn't even know who I was and stuff like that for a bit. It took me a while just to fucking regain just my mental functions and all of that shit. Like so yeah, shit was real. But that's the stress, the pressure, you know, that you go through because of the stupid prohibition. There's no reason for me to be fucking up late all night and to be doing all these late nights campaigning and preparing and all this stuff. Like, if they just ended cannabis prohibition, you know, I could work in a normal job and just be a normal fucking everyday person and not some public figure doing a podcast and shit, because that was never really my intentions. And I think that fucking that shit's just inviting pressure into my life that's just bringing on seizures and stuff. But I'm on the mend, yeah. Look, I've not had seizure now since that Sunday, so fingers crossed, you know, if I can light a candle and say a prayer to the whatever God, you know, the flying spaghetti monster and all of those other guys that you might believe in, that I don't have any more seizures. I'm going to work with a new medication that they've switched me over now to a drug called Keppra. Still won't allow me access to cannabis as a medicine through my consultant. I have to try all of the other drugs there. But for fear of fucking, you know, not being able to do it myself effectively, I just started working with them again with this drug, even though the last one didn't really go up me either, the Tegretol. But yeah, look, fucking hopefully this one works, and we'll keep campaigning for effective access for patients out there like myself and others too. But yeah, as I said, lighting out candles, say a prayer to all those holy peoples. Alright guys, I'll be hopefully back with some live streams during the week. As I said, I'm just taking it easy. I'm not trying to overextend myself. You know, having a kid there as well, 6-month-old, and all of that other kind of stuff that life is going on there. So I'm not going to overextend myself. I can't commit to anything right now, but I'd love to say if I'm going to go live Monday. But to be honest, I don't know what Monday is going to bring until I wake up Monday morning and see what happens. Like, so we'll see. We'll try to get some streams scheduled for next week. I do have an interview there that I will get finished and published that I done there recently with Lisa Quarrell, Scottish mother of an epilepsy patient. She's an ex-cop. She's an upcoming candidate as well in a local council elections over there in Scotland. So I'll have that uploaded there as well in the not too distant future. But yeah, see you all soon, guys. Peace and love. Bye bye. Stay blessed. Keep her lit. Cottonmouth Joe, a new single from Martin's World coming out soon. Where'd you come from, Cottonmouth Joe? Love it, Billy. Love it. Who's that? C. Hopkins Hickman says, nice job, support from Central US. Nice one, guys. It's nice to see that the audience as well is kind of getting a nice international spread. Shout out to Bobby if you're out there as well. Bobby's over there in New York, because a regular normally in the hot box, but he could be asleep right now. John Finnegan, yes, I will indeed, man. I will take care of myself, dude. Myself and Alexis might be on to do some It Takes Two later on, actually. So keep an eye out for that. Myself and Alexis will be on for some wholesome content, as people describe it. But yeah, we'll catch you all later, guys. Bye bye. Fucking Irish goodbyes. I remember those long old ass goodbyes.